What's up, fam? It's time for another episode of the Foresight Podcast. And I want you guys to think back to when you were a kid. I want you to think back to the shows, the cartoons, the movies that inspired you to be a creator. I want you to think of those characters that came out of that inspiration. And I want you to think about, did those characters stick around with you? Or did you just kind of let them go, drift off into the wind after some time? Well, for my guest that's on the show today, he didn't let those characters drift off. He actually held on to them, and now he's built an entire world and, in fact, an entire comic book series around them. So without further ado, let's get into the show and let's talk to my guest, TJ Sterling. All right, man.
5, 4, 3, 2.
You really do that well. You really do. That's kind of like your thing now. You just enunciate when you do that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Foresight Podcast. I am David Gordon, a.k.a. DKG72. That's my screen name on Instagram and YouTube and all those cool places like that. And this is the podcast where we talk to creators and creatives about how they go about their process of creating the wonderful projects that they do, and how do they find the wherewithal to get through these projects, and just we really learn their story. And before we get started, let's do a little house cleaning. So first, just like to say thank you to all of the people that have returned and are listening to the podcast. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Big shout outs to our producer, Mr. Lamar Harris, aka DJ Nooney. He keeps us straight. And our guest today, met this brother when I saw his Kickstarter campaign, and I was really just blown away by his artwork, the presentation, everything about him, and then just kind of reading through and looking at the description for his book. I'm hoping I'm saying this right. Okemus, is that right, DJ?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okemus, just looking at the description for it, it just seemed like such a fun concept. And if you know me, you know I'm all about fun concepts and action and adventure. So please help me welcome our guest, Mr. TJ Sterling.
Yo, what up, everybody? How's it going?
Well, it's going well over here. So TJ, you know, let's get into your origin story a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up in this godforsaken industry we call comics.
Oh man, you know what I'm saying? I was placed in a spaceship, and then my ship crashed here in the land of comics, and I've never been able to leave since.
It sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds about right. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I've been collecting comics forever, man. I think my first comic I ever bought was 1990, and I've always loved art. I think it's just one of those things that you have like the writer gene, you have the football gene, you have like the artist gene, you have the singer gene. Like there's just certain genes people have, and mine was always art. So I love Looney Tunes and He-Man and Bugs Bunny, all these different crazy cartoons growing up in the 80s. And then when comics came out, when I first discovered comics and what they were, I was just blown away by the art and storytelling. But I kind of realized even at a young age, there really wasn't much diversity in comics. So there wasn't really any people that reflected, the people that I grew up with, the life that I lived or that I, experienced through others. So I guess I always wanted to see our people in, unique stories with really, dynamic narratives. And it's just something that always stuck with me as a young artist. So I was always creating black superheroes in some type of vein. Like
Okay.
when I was a huge Dragon Ball Z or an anime or a manga fan, I was drawing black characters in that style
Mm-hmm.
because like I always thought that we needed to be represented in every space. But you know more than anybody that we're not really authentically represented by some of the bigger companies. So a lot of us
Oh man.
indie guys are the ones that are carrying that torch for authentic representation.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of how my journey really started when I first got into comics. I was it was kind of that same discovery. It's like, hey, this is cool and everything like that, but nobody really looks like my friends and the gentlemen that I grew up with, and they taught us, there are morals and codes and all that type of stuff. I wasn't seeing their representation, so again, like you, got into it basically as I want to tell my type of stories, but from our perspective. So what was that like when? What were those first stories like? What kind of stories did you kind of like to tell when you first got into just doing your own comics and doing your own thing?
Yeah, I'm definitely a historian, man. I think for me, because I was so obsessed with comics, I read everything that I could. I watched every video I could. I read every article I could about comics, just to understand the medium more. And I think that when I would read stories about how they would try doing, these white people at a company would try doing a Native American character and then kill them off, or they try doing a black character and they would never be able to get the dialogue right, and it just never came from authentic place. So like again, I knew from a very young age that the authentic representation was not there, and I just drew all the stuff that I loved in the 90s. Like I loved the Sentai genre. I loved stuff about time travel. I loved anime, Guyver, Berserk, what else? Gundam Wing, like Dragon Ball Z. I was a huge DBZ head, but when it first came to the States, so like there were so many cool things I loved, and I was like, man, what I'm gonna do is just any of the stories that I created were kind of like inspired by a lot of that stuff that was happening in the 90s, and Okemus was kind of like the main story out of all of them that kind of I guess had the most legs. It was one of those stories that I couldn't really let go. It always felt like there was more to it as long as I invested in it properly.
Man, that's what's up. And I know when I got into anime, it was the late 80s, I would say. I had seen some anime in the mid 80s, but then late 80s going into the 90s, of course, Akira was like, they showed, I saw Akira, and then I was hooked. And then the other flip side of that was I had gotten the manga when Dark Horse, I think, no, was it Dark Horse? No, it was Epic Comics that did the well, it wasn't mangas at the time. They just did an adaptation in kind of prestige format, beautiful colors and everything like that, and the detail. And I was just like amazed. I couldn't believe that people were doing books like this. So that was my introduction to anime and the manga genre. What was your what was your introduction like? What were your first memories like? What was that first anime that you saw that just was, you were like, whoa, or that first manga that you picked up and you were just like, you know what, this is it. I'm on board.
It's an interesting story, man, because again, my mother was the first person that took me to a comic book store. And she's the one that got me into the world of what comics was about. And again, at the time, it's like, a black woman and her son in a comic book shop where there was no one else that looked like us. It was very unwelcoming. And, understanding what that was, at a very young age was kind of interesting because we were always looking for creative stuff. We were looking for interesting stories because she's a story and a narrative person. Like she doesn't like movies or comics or things that have no story to the quality narrative. So we would go, I think we were at Blockbuster Video back when that was still around in Grand Rapids, Michigan, my hometown. And we were going through an anime section. Like we just passed it by. Like we didn't even know what it was, but I'm like, yo, this shit looks dope, because it was MD Geist, it was the Guyver, it was Bubblegum Crisis, it was Gundam, it was some of these very Akira was definitely there, just these classic, 80s 90s anime that had just came into the States. So the first anime I ever watched was the Guyver, very first, and loved everything about it. I thought it was, yeah, I mean, because my mother was like, "Oh, this looks dope. Let's try it out." And then motherfuckers are getting their heads chopped off. Like, "Oh shit, what
Exactly.
did I just sign my kid up for?" Now I got to get him all the volumes. It's crazy. But yeah, the Guyver was one of the very first ones, and then from there I became, I found out like, oh, this is based on a manga. Like I didn't even, I didn't realize that manga artists and the people who own and write mangas are kind of like the rock stars, because in Japan and Asia, like you can have it can get adapted to like an anime, and that's like their big movie over there. Like they'll spend millions of dollars on an anime. And so once I started learning about it, I started diving deeper into what the manga looked like, and I was blown away by it, because the level of detail that they put in these mangas is absolutely
stunning.
It blows American comics out of the water. I mean, we do detail here in the U.S. The detail they do is like on a whole nother level. So
yeah,
that's type of storytelling really, really stuck with me as a kid, and it's just something that bled into what I do now with Okemus.
Yeah, I know in the early '90s when Dark Horse was really starting to bring the mangas over, and they were they would still reverse them and everything like that. And like nowadays they don't reverse them, and you read you read right to left nowadays. But back in the day, Dark Horse would bring them over, and we would read them left to right. They would make it so that we could read it left to right. And I remember reading Gunsmith Cats and just collecting that series and just marveling at Sonata's detail and just all those great things that he was bringing. And then those car chases. Oh my God. I've never seen anybody do car chases in comics and make it feel like you're actually, in the car chase. So if that was like the first Fast and the Furious. So what first inspired you to create your characters for Okemus, and how long have you had the idea for? Let's go do that. How long have you had the idea for Okemus?
Yeah, Okemus, the idea itself was birthed in art class in high school. So I think I was maybe about 17 years old. And I had this idea where, again, like Okemus is a child of the 90s. The book itself is born from all the cool shit that I loved growing up in the 90s. Everything about it. Again, the Sentai genre, sci-fi, time travel, martial arts. Again, I'm a martial artist also by trade. Like, well, not by trade, but I'm a practitioner. I did it for about 12 years now. So
okay.
I also incorporated that, some of that methodology into Okemus. And again, everything about Okemus to me is like very, very much 90s. Again, we have all those elements, even some elements from like Dragon Ball Z, and what happened with that enemy is a little bit of what's happening in here, just a little bit. So I don't know. Like I said, I was like, yo, it'd be really cool to make a story that has all these things that I love, but it's just featuring Black folks and then other people of color. You know what I'm saying? That was my thought. And I was like, yo, this is already something I do with other, if I'm doing a Dragon Ball Z fan art piece, like I probably would make do Black. Like that was what I was already doing and in high school, just as fan art for fun.
Right. And
I was like, man, this would be dope to just take some of these things that I liked, put them into one story and just build it. And for me, like I said, it's taken me years to develop the characters, the overall look. I mean, a lot of the costumes have kind of slowly evolved over the years. It's really been an interesting space to just kind of experiment with in terms of like your own characters and stuff.
Well, how was that process? How a lot of people don't know, like most of my characters that I have that I'm putting out independently as a creator are characters that are like 10, 12 years deep, and some even older than that.
That's right.
Explain to people what that process is like. How how do you hold on to something and tinker with it and take it from maybe one thing and then develop it into what you have it now at present day in 2020? What's that process like? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to come up with a concept of what a character is, like, whether it's a doodle or a sketch or a costume or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what really, what really brings a character to life is was when you actually have a real person or a real experience built into that character.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of the characters that are in Okemus are based on, experiences that I've had personally or experiences that my friends have had, or there's a couple of characters that are based on some of my childhood friends in terms of like that energy and the vibe that they carried. So each one of the characters has a life that's built into it. I think when each character has, a reality component, then it's easier to write it because you're almost getting into the mindset of who that character is as the creator and as the writer, because you're basically playing God, like you are the puppeteer with this book, you know what I'm saying? And you're the producer, the director, you're all that stuff. And again, you just how do you direct your actors? You know what I'm saying? How do you pull the right strings to make the characters do something that is really cool and fun? And I guess my suggestion to anyone is just to make them realistic, make them believable. Excuse me.
Yeah, and I've used the God analogy before. I've always stated that being a writer and an artist, especially being a writer, is the closest thing to being God that I think any of us will ever experience. Because just like you said, you're the one pulling the strings. You're the one that kind of decides, okay, this person's story, it's time for that person to go, or this person, you may have a character you want to 86 and then all of a sudden you change your mind and that character goes on. So that is that's a great analogy, I think, for what we do as creators. So let's get into your creation. Let's get into Okemus for a second. You created a Super Sentai team, a black Super Sentai team. What was that process like? What were the things that you drew from to kind of pull this all together? And then what's the storyline that we're following with Okemus?
Absolutely. So again, I want to clarify, I think, a couple things for folks that are listening, and because a lot of people ask me what is the Sentai genre,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not one thing, just so everybody knows, because Dave, you already know this, but I mean, everybody else who's listening, the Sentai genre is basically men and women in armored suits fighting monsters. That's the genre. Now, that genre started back in like the 70s, long time ago, with with TV shows and anime like Ultraman 6,
Mm-hmm.
Predates anything that we saw in America by like 20 years. What is it? I'm trying to think. So there's Ultraman 6. There's
I'm stop
there's
you for
so
a
many
second.
more. I'm
gonna stop you for a second and date myself. I grew up watching old Ultraman, the live action shows. That was my first show I fell in love with as a kid. I was born in '72.
Yeah.
And I remember getting up early in the morning. And I think, when these local TV stations, they kind of weren't tethered to these big corporations like they are now. It was easier for shows like that to kind of filter over, and they just put it on, and nobody even said anything about it. So watching Ultraman, right. I was already indoctrinated into those worlds. And was that the same for you?
That's right.
What was the show for you that kind of pulled you in and just you were like, oh, okay, this is what it is?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I felt like the whole genre pulled me in because, I mean, again, like it was, because again, the genre itself is and has always been Ultraman, what is it? Power Rangers. It's been Beetleborgs. It's been VR Troopers. It's been the Guyver. It's been a million other types of Kamen Rider is a huge one, which is absolutely huge in Japan. They still do Kamen Rider movies to this day.
Oh,
So
wow.
that whole genre of, stuff that was basically incredibly popular in Asia from like, the 70s all the way up to the 90s and still to this day, came to my TV screen. Well, first again, the Geiger was the first one I ever watched.
Hmm.
But even before Power Rangers or Beetleborgs, any of the newer ones, the Guyver predates a lot of that stuff too, because that came out in the 80s.
Hmm.
But I mean, again, I was watching Ultraman 6 on Fox TV back in 1994. You know what I'm saying? When my sister was born, that was what I was doing while she was in the hospital getting popped out of the uterus. So, I mean, like I said, that was one of the very first shows that I loved. And then shortly after that, Power Rangers came along, and again, VR Troopers, which I thought was a really dope show because it was kind of dark. It was action was pretty cool.
Hmm.
Beetleborgs was right after that. Again, that was the predominant genre in the 90s, and for me, all of those were inspiring to me because not one was any better than the other. I mean, my favorite is always going to be the Guyver for sure, and I'd say probably VR Troopers number 2, but.
Hmm.
That concept of a person, of a man or a woman being able to shift into like an impenetrable suit of armor, like a knight,
Hmm.
and fighting, creatures that are out of this world,
Right.
has always been kind of intriguing to me, that concept. So, fast forward years and years later, I'm in high school. That genre's kind of died down. I'm in high school again. Dragon Ball Z is now the biggest thing out there at the moment, and I started coming up with the concept for Okemus. And I don't know if you want to jump in. I was just getting ready to tell people what Okemus was about.
Let's put a pin on that for just a moment because right now what we're going to do is we're going to pay some bills, and when we come back, I want to definitely get right to the origins or how you built the concept for Okemus because just love that concept and just the artwork and everything is just dope about it. So let's pay some bills real quick, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back, and we were talking with TJ Sterling about his comic Okemus that he's running a Kickstarter for. If you don't know, he's doing the crowdfunding for this. Is this the first issue or the second?
Well, this is issue 4, actually.
Issue 4.
Issue
Okay.
4.
Okay, so this is for issue 4. So he's running the Kickstarter for issue 4. And we're actually getting into the origin of this concept of this wonderful concept of this wonderful comic. So, TJ, just continue with explaining how you came from 17-year-old TJ to older TJ now, just like with a 4 issues deep or 5 issues because you had the 0 issue too, right?
Yeah, 0 issue, so it's technically 5 books. Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're 5 books deep
I mean,
into this adventure.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess everybody's ever joining us, that we were just basically talking about some of the inspirations of Okemus. Again, Okemus is a sci-fi martial art action story centered on a young man of color named Kale who has a latent superhuman ability that could potentially save the human race. And Kale was being pursued by 4 Sentai type warriors from the future who are actually the villains of the story that want to steal this power that Kale has locked deep within his DNA.
Oh, wow.
There's lots of action, drama, and suspense, and tons of really great, storytelling, nonlinear kind of storytelling that makes you think a little bit. And it's some powerful stuff. So I'd love for everybody to check it out. We are actually in we had issue 0 dropped in 2015. That was our prequel. And now, and every year since then, we've had issue 1, 2, 3, and then now number 4 is dropping this year through our Kickstarter that just ended last week. But people still can pre-order it. People can still get into it. We do have 5 books in the series, so there's tons of story to actually get involved with.
Oh, that sounds great. So what are some of the themes? I don't want you to give away too much, but just kind of pull everybody in a little bit. What are some of the overall themes that you're really attacking with Okemus and with Kale's growth and adventure in his journey as a hero?
Absolutely. I mean, Kale is so it's interesting because Okemus is a young adventure. It's a YA book, coming of age, absolutely, without a doubt. And I think what we're kind of addressing with Kale is some very interesting issues that we all kind of go through as Black Americans. And I say that because Kale is an orphan on various different levels. You know, Kale does not have any parents. He does not know where he comes from, but he actually is majoring in genetics at Purdue University, which is the #1 college for genetics in the country at the moment. And he feels that genetics will actually allow him to understand more about his lineage and, you know, his everything that he basically where he comes from, because he has no idea. And I think a lot of us who were born in this country and can trace our lineage, you know, to a point where it actually disappears. Because I mean, like, my lineage goes to South Carolinas and then it disappears. Like, we don't know, you know, we know that our great ancestors were at some point, you know, slaves or were owned by somebody. Like, that's a thing that we know within our family. We just don't know who they were or what they were. So, and we don't even know, even if we rewind the tape even further, we don't even know what tribe our people come from in Africa. So there's a certain level of a lack of identity that we don't even know about within our own family. You know what I'm saying? On my side of the family. So it's kind of an interesting thing. We're touching a little bit on that overall concept in Okemus and what that means when you are, you know, a person who, because again, in my opinion, Black folks in general are superheroes. You know, we're able to do things that most people cannot do. We make it look easy. And, you know, there's something amazing that's in our genetics and our genes. So I'm basically speaking to that with an allegory of Kale's story within Okemus. And we also speak to bullying and believing in yourself too, you know, uplifting stuff. But we're also speaking to, you know, concepts like not giving up and perseverance. And then we're also speaking to things like police brutality, because these 4 authoritarian type figures are basically coming to, are targeting this young Black man. So it's just like, it's something that we see and we've experienced, you know, through our lives. And again, we're telling that through a lens of entertainment, but again, there's still a deep rooted message in it as well.
That's really dope. And I like the allegory of his journey to kind of figure out his identity being an orphan, because in a lot of ways, if you think about it, Black people are orphaned and we're doing the same. A lot of the ways we're doing the same thing. We're all kind of trying to trace back and figure out where we came from. And just my personal journey with that was our trail kind of ends in Oklahoma. We know that we have family from the South that immigrated to Oklahoma and then spread out, but the trail kind of goes cold from there. And it's kind of one of those things that's kind of it's a lot of people deal with it, and I know for a lot of us, we secretly find it frustrating. So with Kale, what kind of character would you say he is? Is he more of a one of those go time type of characters, or is he more, he lets it come to him? What is his personality type as a character?
Kale is I think like his best friend in the comic book, Brianna Martinez, we wrote some Latinx characters in there as well. She's like the spicy and the fiery one, and he's kind of like the calm, introverted, what is it? Like intellect, where he's constantly like researching and science and stuff. So he's very much like a calm spirit, a calm guy. And what ends up happening is that when these 4 warriors come from the future looking for him, something's unlocked in his DNA, and he actually starts to evolve and change before their eyes. And he goes from somebody who's, who's very, very calm to be very, very unstable. You know what I'm saying? Right. So again, he's the character that's kind of minding his own business and doing his thing and trying to figure out life. And then someone comes around and just tries to mess with him and to poke him pride,
Yeah, they want to poke the bear and then be surprised when something happens.
Exactly.
So, you're 5 issues deep into this, and you just closed another successful Kickstarter. It, how do you feel when you've gone through? Because this is did you kickstart the other from the 0 issue on up, right?
I did not. From issue 0 to 3, those were self-funded, and
Okay.
like I said, Kickstarter's a new thing, man. I just jumped into it because we have no cons, and I wanted to try to reach another market, honestly, and it's been really, really cool so far.
Okay. So issue 4 is your first Kickstarter.
That's right.
What was that process like? Because I think people sometimes get Kickstarter twisted and they think it's the magic pill that solves everything, but not understanding the work and the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into building, maintaining, and then executing to full fulfillment a campaign. And now you're fresh. You're about a week out. You're a week away from it. Explain how that worked, how that process worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like the whole thought of Kickstarter was kind of a daunting thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had never done one. It's like, like, I don't know, someone asking you to play a game on the playground you've never played before, and then them telling you got to be good at it. Like, it's almost like, what? Like, really? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just a very weird experience for me, because for years I was content with, funding my own books and then going to a con and making all that money back, and then plus some, and then pouring that back into the business. So cons and meeting people in person was my Kickstarter for years. That's where I made the majority of my money. So doing something completely online and not really understanding how it would work and how whether people would react to it, it was just kind of a weird thing for me to wrap my head around. But I just researched the shit out of it, bro. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I spent months. I think I spent a good 2 months of like reading every article I could, talking to every single person I knew that had a lucrative Kickstarter that was over 10K or more. Having, these conversations were like 2 or 3 hours at a time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was really, I was taking hella notes. I was literally just trying to figure out the sauce. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the recipe for a successful Kickstarter? Now, obviously, you have to have great art and a great story, and you have to have a decent fan base behind you. Because somebody asked me this the other day, like, oh, do you think that your fan base for Okemus helped you? I was like, hell yeah, it did. Like, they show up for me every single time I go to a con, whether it's on the West Coast or the East or the Midwest or whatever. They show up regardless, which is, I got love for everybody who shows up for me. So thank you to all the fans. But yeah, having a fan base is a big thing, but also making sure that you do your homework. So if everybody's watching, you want to do a successful Kickstarter, do your homework. Make sure that the art that you have on there is top notch. Like, spend the money to get some of the best art that you can, because it will pay dividends. I guarantee that for sure. And also, man, never relaxing. Like, during the whole 30 days of my Kickstarter, I never relaxed. I lost sleep for this shit. Like, I literally couldn't sleep on certain nights because I was constantly thinking about it. I'm constantly looking at the page, and
that's a bar.
I did absolutely everything I could to be on every single podcast I could. I was doing maybe 3 or 4 podcasts a day, like a week, sometimes more. And then I was also submitting my information to news outlets and trying to get as much exposure as I could. So, like, I was not letting my foot up off the gas for even one day, because I was like, yo, I'm going to make as much money as I can. I'm going to milk the shit out of this cow to make sure that I can get everybody these books. I can make sure that all the stuff that I'm not able to do at a con, I'm going to be able to do with this Kickstarter. I was very, very adamant and focused and like driven to make it as successful as it was. And, our initial goal was 3K. We met that within less than 2 hours of the drop of the Kickstarter. And then over a 30, day period, the numbers continued to shoot up. And, we ended the campaign, last Friday with almost 22K. You know what I'm saying? Like,
man, that's what I'm talking
about. yeah, it was a beautiful thing. But like we worked our me and really me, and then my marketing team that I hired, we worked our asses off to make sure that people knew what was going on. I was sliding in people's DMs on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I was everywhere talking to everybody. Yo, did you see it? Yo, did you see it? Yo, did you see it? Like, it was a nonstop thing. And I just think that if you really want something to succeed, you got to just put the time in. It's like taking a test. If you ain't gonna study for the test, like you could study a tiny bit, but if you're that dude that has the flashcards and you talking to other people and you got tutoring and shit, like you are gonna be hella successful.
Mm-hmm. No, that's another bar. um, but so how stressful did it get for you? Because I can imagine, and I've worked with people that have done Kickstarters, and literally by day 25, I'm like, bro, you need some sleep, or you need to lay off the coffee. So how stressful did it actually get because you were so invested in the process?
Like I said, man, I put myself through a hell of a whole lot of stress throughout the entire thing. Cause again, like, you know, we were sitting at like 16K for a minute. And I'm like, okay, well, we essentially met our goal. It's cool, whatever. And I almost wanted to relax, but I'm like, wait a minute, like there's all these other things that I really want to do with the brand. I want to make a video game, and I want to, you know, put a masterclass in people's hands. Like there's all these things that I really want to do to give back. And I had these cool stretch goals for charities and a few other things going on. And, you know, I just wasn't satisfied mentally. And I think that's what kept me in a state of like fight or flight. Like I'm not satisfied. I have to push it. But I think once we hit over 20K and we were over 21, and then, you know, I've been getting orders post the end of the Kickstarter. And this is one thing I'm going to tell everybody. Like, if you see the Kickstarter after this video, or you see Ray Comics and, you know, we're on our website and you want more, I am honoring anybody who wants to jump in on a tier. I'm honoring that up until fulfillment. Fulfillment begins in a week and a half. So people still have time to jump on the Kickstarter campaign perks if they want to. So, and David, you got that link, so please drop it in the chat if you can.
I will definitely do that.
Yeah, but it's stressful, man. But I think, like I said, anybody will tell you the same thing, that it's just like, yo, this shit was a lot. But once they start hitting their goals, they're just like, okay, cool. I'm all right now. I'm doing good. I'm all right. I'm cool.
Yeah, no, you're definitely doing it, and I just wanted to get that across, because again, I think people sometimes think I just, you know, it's rinse, wash, repeat, put it up there, and it's just, oh, I'm supposed to make a ton of money. But you know, you just explaining that right there may have just changed somebody's whole mindset as to how they're going to approach their Kickstarter moving forward. So we needed them to kind of hear that, to hear your journey, and just, you know, the drive and determination that you put into making that Kickstarter a success. So what is the next steps for Okemus? Is there going to be a issue 5? When will it drop? I know you mentioned the video game. Will there be any advances into like other media? What is the overall plan? I don't want you to give away the anything you may have in the works, but kind of the overall broad view plan for Okemus moving forward.
Absolutely. So, yeah, the biggest plan that we had of this year was going to be the Kickstarter. Again, we crushed that. We did really well with it. So now, you know, our biggest thing that we have in front of us is fulfillment, making sure that everybody gets their orders on time. Mm-hmm. Again, the Kickstarter was really dope because we had exclusive T-shirts. We had, you know, Kickstarter limited edition toys, collectible figurines. Again, we had all the catalog we had the Okemus catalog from 0 all the way up to number 4 available. Post the Kickstarter fulfillment, we will be working on issue 5 and 6. There's maybe 5 other books that are being developed currently through Ray Comics at the moment. You know, we all have a whole bunch of IPs and really interesting stories that are basically in the birthing stages. Like we've got artists and writers and, you know, scripts are being done as well as art's being created for it. So just the wheels are turning, man. The business is moving one piece at a time. And like, I'm a steady as she goes type of person. So it's like, I'd rather be consistent versus try to rush the finish line and run out of gas. You know what I'm saying? Like consistently, Ray Comics is going to definitely deliver some great content. So I hope everybody jumps on, you know?
No, definitely. And I just like the way you've set things up, and you've got the whole, just kind of got the whole process moving it, you know, just kind of like a well-oiled machine. I know there's hiccups. There's always hiccups,
Yes,
but you know, you can kind of tell when somebody is just kind of going through the motions and when somebody's actually doing what they really need to be doing to get where they need to be with their creation. And
that's right.
so what I want you to do now, how can people get a hold of you via social media, and of course website? I'm going to put the link to the Kickstarter into the description for the show. So how can people get a hold of you and find out what's going on with Ray Comics?
Absolutely. It's super easy. At Ray Comics, RAE Comics on Instagram, Twitter. So I've got a Facebook page as well that you can see stuff on. It's raycomics.com, RAEcomics.com, and you can easily message me there, drop me a line. I get back to people within 24 hours. Or if you want to follow me on my personal account, you know, you can search TJ Sterling on Instagram. I'm sorry, search TJ Sterling on Facebook, and then I'm at TJ Sterling Art on Instagram as well, my personal account. So super easy to find me, get in touch with me. You can subscribe to our mailing list. We blast every few weeks to let people know what's going on. And I said it's super easy. So I really hope everybody gets a chance to just check us out and see what we got going on.
Okay, that's really dope. One other question: being a black businessman and moving into doing your first Kickstarter and things of that nature, how are you looking at the world as we are in this new pandemic reality? Because I can't even say post-COVID or anything like that. We're still in it. So how are you looking at the landscape, and how are you maneuvering your business to best take advantage of the opportunities that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting space. I mean, there's so many people that are home, so more people are more online than ever. So I think it's kind of like a very, very ripe season to actually be pitching your stuff online, to be promoting your stuff online, to be trying to get more fans online, to upgrade the social media. You know, to upgrade your social media. This is the perfect time to do it. And because of the state of the world that we're in with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the things that have been happening to our community, there are a lot of people that are looking to invest into black business owners, into black businesses, period. So there's a lot of people of all walks and creeds and, you know, and ethnicities and races that are investing in black products right now. So again, if you're going to do it, like, do it now more than any time. Like, it's like the best time to do a Kickstarter. It's the best time to be online. Like, you got to grind though. Like, you got to consistently work at it. So that's my advice. Just get out there and do something.
Man, that's great advice. That's great advice. TJ, I just want to say thank you for being on the show, man. I really appreciate you. Again, have all the links listed in the description, and just letting you guys know. No problem. Just letting you guys know. Of course, this is Foresight Podcast. We are available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, more, Anchor, of course. If you want to get in touch with me, you can always reach me at DKG72 on Twitter and Instagram. The Patreon, it will be linked in the description, so definitely take a look at that. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and close the show out. TJ, once again, thank you for coming on the show, man. I appreciate you. And everybody go get Okemus, even if you weren't able to get onto the Kickstarter. TJ is keeping it open up until fulfillment, which will be
The film will be in about a week and a half. So again, the Kickstarter's closed, but if you see something you like on there, you can easily click the raycomics.com button on the Kickstarter page. Brings you to the page. Drop me a line. Send me a message. Hey, this is what I want. Can you still honor it? I'll send you an invoice via PayPal. You pay for it, and then you get, you get basically brought into the campaign. So anything we got on there, you can get your hands on.
And with that, TJ has the last word. This your boy David Gordon, DKG72. This is the Foresight Podcast, and I'll holler at y'all later. Peace.
Peace.